using coding agents.
When you build or design agentic systems, control is the first thing that you should focus on.
The other layer, I would say, is the high-stakes, deterministic, and auditable tasks.
What do you think are essential to classify an AI system?
Workflow by specific amount. We might use an LLM to generate a deterministic artifact, something that saves time, something that saves money.
Thank you for listening to Agent Build Expert Exchange podcast. I'm really glad that you're putting in some time to watch my content. In this podcast, we explore how we can stay ahead in the game of AI. If you are a developer, an engineer, wondering what to focus on next, this episode will give you a practical roadmap for succeeding in an AI powered world. Today, I'm joined by Lena Hall. Lena is the Senior Director of Developer Relations at Akamai Technologies. In this conversation, we really dive into how developers should really prepare for AI. What mindsets should they have? What are the skills that they should be learning? What are the habits that they should build that actually matter beyond the hype and the noise that we see in social media? So sit back and enjoy this podcast. Hi, Lena. Welcome to the Agent Build podcast.
Thank you. Excited to be here.
I'm very happy. I'm very happy to have you, and really looking forward to our conversation.
Same
So
here. I've been looking forward to this for a few weeks now.
thank you very much. So let me set the context for this podcast first, right? So I mainly talk to engineers, senior engineers, and CTOs. And what I've realized talking and running this community for the last 1 year is that there's a lot of noise with AI, and people are a bit confused with where to go with this. So, for example, data engineers are a bit tensed about their roles, how that will change with AI coming in. So I try to bring people from the industry who work in this space, understand this space very well, to kind of share their experience with my audience, like what's going on, cutting through the noise that we face in social media day in and day out, and showing them the real picture of either how they can prepare themselves, or is there anything to be scared of, or and or what you are doing in your life.
Yeah, this is the topic of the year. I feel like everybody is thinking about it and curious about what it means
Yeah.
to be in AI and data right now.
Yes. So why don't you start by giving some idea about what you do, your background, what you have done previously. I think that'll be a great start to the podcast.
My current role is a Senior Director of Developer Relations and Developer Strategy at Akamai. I'm working a lot with data and AI, especially AI inference, things like running open source LLMs on GPU infrastructure, building AI agents and AI applications. Prior to that, I worked at AWS as a head of developer relations in North America. And before then, at Microsoft as a director of data and AI DevRel team. And previously, I've also been an engineer. So I've done engineering at Microsoft Research and at other companies, focusing a lot on data engineering, distributed systems, AI systems. So I'm a huge fan of what AI is enabling us to do, and all the things that we can automate and make more efficient. So this topic is very close to me, and I'm excited for this conversation.
That's really good. I did notice that you went to Data Day Texas conference
Data
recently.
Day Texas, yes,
Yeah. How
it
did it
was
go?
it was amazing. It was happening in Austin last week.
Mhm.
So the people who attended were like creators of distributed systems that we all use. There were folks like Bill Inman, creator of the data warehouse.
Wow.
So quite a lot of interesting, thought-provoking discussions happened during Data Day Texas, and a lot of it was focused around reliable AI, around using coding agents, and what are some of the kind of failure modes with that. So it was a great conference, and I hope that the organizers will continue on with the theme in the coming years.
Thank you very much for watching my content. It's really appreciated. I need a favor from you. If you can subscribe to my channel, that helps the YouTube algorithm to drive more views. If you find my content valuable, please subscribe to my channel and share it with your friends as well. This will help me bring in more valuable guests to the podcast so that you can learn from their knowledge in the field. Nice. And what theme do you think comes out of these conferences, like when you attend them, in terms of your background, in distributed systems and data, and then now coming into AI? How do you see that, that evolution, and how you're rethinking your role as well?
Yeah, so at that conference, I gave a talk on a very similar topic to what kind of your question was. So, how does our work change? And a lot of it is related to how do we work with integrating LLMs into our products, or how we use coding agents in our work right now. And there is a quite a controversial view that community members have around whether we can just trust AI to do things for us versus kind of the systems that we can build to be able to build reliable AI and reliable workflows based on the non-deterministic API calls that we use when we query an LLM. So my talk was around context engineering and context architecture, which dives into a lot of that. So, because you asked about distributed systems and coming from the distributed systems background, I see a lot of parallels in terms of what we are running into right now with LLMs and the work that we've done in distributed systems. For example, everybody knows probably the distributed systems two generals problem.
Mhm.
It applies directly to the LLM calls, if we can say it that way. So you can't be sure that the message that you sent to an LLM was received exactly as you intended and that it was acted on exactly correctly, right? In distributed systems, the two general problem is about whether the message was received and delivered and whether the two stakeholders can act in a unified way when there is an unreliable component like the network. And in LLMs, we have a different situation where the intent can be misinterpreted, and there is an ambiguous response that can be made. So, for me, I think the biggest takeaway is that non-deterministic steps that we have with LLMs, they will break if we don't control them structurally. So we have to build infrastructure and state management around how we work with LLM to add reliability. And a lot of that is around structured outputs. It's about phasing. It's about including subject matter expert in the workflow with LLMs and coordination protocols as well. For example, multiple services need infrastructure that doesn't bottleneck on a single orchestrator. So same with multiple agents. We're seeing a lot of options for what we can do with orchestration, fallbacks, retries, and things like that. Quite a lot of interesting parallels.
Indeed, indeed. So when I talk to customers about, especially about agents nowadays, I mean, the autonomous word comes up a lot. And I think what I tell them is, this is a distracting word, because I think when you build or design agentic systems, control is the first thing that you should focus on. But it's such an irony that we call it autonomous agents, whereas you should think about how you should be controlling them, rather than them being autonomous at all, right?
Yeah, and I really like this idea. So because not many people are thinking about it this way. So a lot of developers and especially in the leadership, we see a lot of activity around how can we automate everything, or how can we remove a human from the workflow. And when it comes to those really high stakes workloads, especially in like you work in finance and healthcare, something that the cost of error is really high.
Yes.
If we do not control certain elements, then that means that we're accepting the non-deterministic possibility of the error that might affect our users. And I think that it's a really important part of the strategy to understand what are those points in our workflow that absolutely need controls. So where sometimes we might use an LLM to generate a deterministic artifact, which could be code, which could be plan or logic, or split things into tasks, but then we still use a more deterministic artifact to actually execute in production. So that's what I've seen work for high stakes projects where we don't necessarily rely on the LLM calls to provide us with the autonomous actions, because we can't trace the thinking process 100% reliability. We can't understand exactly what's the structure or order of tool calls is going to be.
Mhm.
We can hope that an LLM picks the right number of tools or the right ordering or choice of tools and the logic that it runs, but we cannot rely on it. So I would really advise to start with what is that business use case and the cost of error, and at which point can we afford a little deviation from truth to happen versus not.
Absolutely. I think that's really critical, because what I see is that LLMs, even when they're good at reasoning, it's a very common error to not get the tool call right, and then that becomes a major problem. That's where you need checkpoints, right? So I think
Exactly.
that kind of connects to the topic of pragmatic AI that you kind of bring up in your content as well. So for our viewers, like, can you just double click on that and explain what is pragmatic AI, and when do you think it is, like, driving from that principle, when do you think it is worth not doing an AI project?
Yeah. So to me, pragmatic AI means building out a system that uses AI that meets the business goals defined by the system owner. So if a business goal is to, let's say, improve productivity by 300%, that's a great and valid business goal.
Hmm.
If we can apply AI to solve this for a company or for a team, that means that we, in a pragmatic way, have delivered on this goal. Another example of a goal, a business goal, could be cut costs of a certain workflow by specific amount. So, to me, business goal is something that can be numerically categorized in a specific business value, right? And pragmatic means to me that we can reliably guarantee that we are going to achieve this goal with our system. So when we talk about pragmatic AI, it's not using an LLM to hope that the end result will be what we intended for it to be, but
Mhm.
how we architect the system to solve the right problem. And there are a few layers to this logic. So the first layer, I would say, is low stakes, more conceptual tasks. For
Mhm.
example, if we want to implement chat with your docs or internal Q&A assistant or something that doesn't have direct customer impact, but it does help us with removing certain routine, boring work, right?
Mhm.
Here's the failure here is cheap, and the speed really matters. So we can achieve pragmatic results with using simple approaches like naive RAG, and it's not a complex system to implement, and it does deliver on some of those more kind of internal, more um, basic use cases. Another example is, or another layer is exploratory, more ambiguous tasks
Mhm.
where AI acts more as a copilot. Here is where naive RAG is not precise enough for us. We need something better, like maybe agentic RAG with advanced routing across components, where in a certain case it routes to like a text to SQL tool, and in another case it goes with a multi-index semantic search or hybrid search, depending on the query. And the other layer, I would say, is the high stakes, deterministic, and auditable tasks, where the input of the subject matter expert is non negotiable. So, the example that I like to give here is when we code with AI, we are the subject matter expert because we're software engineers. We see the generated code, we can validate it, or we can validate the logic of it before we move forward with with moving it to production. And for a financial system, if we, as software engineers, we generate code, we don't have the input of a financial SME for a high stakes task. It's a very unreliable way to deliver some business value, because there is a high likelihood that we're going to miss the misbehavior of the system. And right now, there aren't a lot of easy ways to integrate the SME input before we ship. I know that we can use evals, which is a way to do error analysis and bring in SME input to validate the production logs and say if something passes or fails the test. But I think that for that, we need to bring the SME before we roll out the system to production. So we have to decouple planning and execution here and give them a way to take a look at the plan and validate it and work together with the SME to ship the right thing. And there are ways to build platforms for it. It's just an intensive way of doing that.
That's really cool because something that I pick up from your from this structure that you've laid out is the role of an SME in the whole ecosystem, right? And when I talk to a lot of my if folks that I normally interact with, whether it's from my audience or in my customer, in those companies, is there's a lot of as I mentioned earlier, like tension of, hey, I'm not even in AI, right? I don't even know what's happening in this world of AI. How can I really catch up with all of these things? And there's some end up thinking that they might need to understand the technical it is. They need to be have a PhD, or they are like buying courses to learn, like buying expensive courses to learn deep technical stuff where they
Mm-hmm.
probably don't need to be so technical. Like they can map their existing knowledge in their area, being an SME in their domain, and bring that knowledge into the the building and planning, and either in the planning or in the execution phase of these systems. What
Yes.
do you think about that? Like, because I see a lot of people like having that misconception that, hey, we need to be very technical to work in AI.
Yeah. So I think what you said is true. If you are a subject matter expert in some domain, that's, let's say, not a tech domain, it's maybe marketing, maybe medicine, maybe retail, you have a real chance to make impact in AI if you learn to use the tools that, or work with teams who are automating some of the things in your industry by being that SME. And what I'm seeing right now with a lot of startup founders in the Bay Area, in other places, they are building out ways to involve SMEs into the development process. So there's quite a few tools that are emerging where you don't have to read the code to validate the logic,
Hmm.
but you may need to create a diagram of how the workflow should be, or you may need to use a specific domain language to articulate what you want to build. And then when the system generates the code and the artifacts, it also potentially gives you the visual for the workflow and how it runs. It might be a sophisticated workflow, but code isn't the only way that a person can validate and understand it, because I think LLMs are getting good enough where code is just an output artifact that, like binaries, we don't always manage binaries. They are generated, and underlying system behind the scenes uses them, but we're not looking at them. So code becomes something like that in a way. The caveat here is, if you are a software engineer, if you are a technical person, then there's still a huge wide range of areas where you do need technical deep expertise, especially for AI infrastructure,
Mhm.
for building out those tools that make AI reliable, that work behind the scenes. So I think there's two ways that a new person, or an existing developer can be involved in AI. If you're technical right now, staying slightly technical is probably not an option. You have to either go deep into building infrastructure for AI, managing data systems with AI, or you can go the other way and work with the domain experts and like, help make those systems more accessible and be the SME. So that's my view on this topic. Yeah.
No, and I can totally relate to it because in my work with enterprises, I can actually see how they are aligning organizations and teams now exactly in that format that there are people who are technical. They would probably be better going deep into the technology and building the infrastructure, but they also federate out resources or people who are probably are leaned towards the domain expertise like the industry or a business domain expertise, and they work with those teams who have got those business knowledge. So I see this pattern coming out a lot now in how organizations are moving. So talking about, you mentioned trustworthy systems, right? And talking about trust, I see that, I mean, when you talk about AI system being reliable, we often tend to lean towards the technical metrics, so like uptime, SLAs, and latency, for example, which feed into this stuff, accuracy. Beyond these technical metrics, what do you think are essential to classify an AI system as trustworthy enough? Like, what are the three, four things that you would look after
Yeah.
before you decide that, okay, this is something that we can trust?
Yeah. I really enjoy the framework of evaluations. This is, to me, it moves the metrics that you mentioned, those accuracy and precision, and all of those more mathematical ML metrics that kind of we used before to evaluate the correctness of AI systems, to something that shifts the definition to does it actually work? And to me, the question, does it actually work, can have two answers, yes or no. So if we translate the question of does it work into your domain specific, more detailed question, for example, if we have a retail system and we are implementing an AI assistant for giving out refunds, we have the customer chat logs and we have the answer and the outcome of the AI assistant. And we ask our subject matter experts to identify, did the LLM solve the problem? So did they give out the refund correctly or not? So I think that's the ultimate test where we define a question. If you're building a refund assistant, the question would be, did the refund functionality work as expected?
Yeah.
Yes or no? And the SME is empowered to evaluate the, let's say, 100 to maybe 300 of the data points
Yeah.
of interactions and classify them into buckets depending on, was the tone correct? Was the timing appropriate across those categories of how we would treat the output. And based on that, we can identify, okay, we can trust this system because all of these tests passed, and we can iterate on it until they do. So that's kind of one point of how we can evaluate trustworthiness. Ideally, we move that whole process from production to a little bit earlier in the workflow. So as we work on the functionality before we push it to prod, we can provide a platform for an SME to be like the beta tester of the system, the way that it connects dynamically with the semantic graph, because there is a lot of institutional knowledge in organizations, and a lot of these errors can be spotted ahead of time before they go out to the user. So yeah, when you can show someone why a system made a certain decision, and when they correct it before deployment, that's when I trust it.
Yeah, no, it's true, and I think that you mentioned this example of correctly refunding on purchase orders, right? And I exactly worked on these use cases with a couple of customers, and this is one of the burning challenges that they face, because you cannot really have an agent handle financial transactions like refunding something without knowing what's happening in the decision making process, because the customer can easily raise a dispute, and then you have to explain the customer legally, in from regulations perspective as well, that what has happened with the decision, right? So it's really important, I think. And that's why we need not only evaluation, but also a way of measuring and observing this, how the system is working, right? um,
Exactly.
when I talk to customers and industry leaders, I think one of the hottest topic is what use case should we build on, right? So like everyone's like, "Oh, what's that use case that will create a difference for my business?" Right? And in your perspective, like when you from your world, what are the AI use cases that excite you as a director in your company? And what use cases do you think will actually drive meaningful outcome for businesses such as yours?
Yeah, I think I categorize the use cases into a few buckets. So, one is something that saves time,
Hmm.
something that saves money, something that creates competitive advantage or makes you more productive as a company.
Yeah.
So, anything along these lines is worth investing in and exploring. I would start with the more lower stakes use cases, and then move slightly higher. So, but really, what excites me about these use cases is when AI scales the expert judgment of a person versus replacing it. So we're not replacing the expertise of someone. We are removing the kind of the burdensome work, the work that is we know is going to be automated with time, and we let the expert to be even a bigger expert in their area and use their time wisely. And I think we're seeing a lot of that happening where whether it's in software engineering or it's in specific industries, people who use AI and who use AI tools that make them more productive, they are noticing how much more exhausted they are now because their brain is working and spinning a lot more. And they're making trade offs. They're giving direction, and it requires a lot more thinking and context switching. So we're removing that boring work that let our brain relax, and now we're constantly operating at 100% brain engagement. And I think that excites me because it allows our experts to, use their judgment at 100% force. So, and that is happening because we're decoupling planning from execution. The execution becomes something that can be delegated to an agent, and planning and system design, requirements, definition, analyzing edge cases, like that's what lands on the plate of real experts. So that's really exciting to me.
That's yeah, that's so true. Let's look at it from another angle, right? So what are you seeing from your community, like the developer community? What are you hearing from them in terms of AI? Their career or use cases, whatever. Like, what is the signal that you're getting from developer community?
I think the developer community is split. I think the developer community is also in a layered state. There is a top 1% community that
Mm,
realized that, okay, everything is changing and we have to change the way we work. And
yeah.
they are staying on top of everything. They are looking at every single, new Hacker News thread
Yeah.
and trying out the Ralph Loops, the Gastown, all of the technologies that are coming out.
Mm,
They are being the builders and the experimenters, and their life, fully orbits around staying at the top of, the expertise um, crew that operates in the community. The second layer, I think, are people who are a little bit overwhelmed. Like they work at a job. Their company may or may not be adopting AI at a certain rate. They I think they are realizing that the train is moving fast, but they may not have kind of the opportunities at their job to do it. So they're trying to find more ways to get involved and to apply it. So they may be starting to build some things. They might start using things like Cursor or Cloud Code, hopefully, something that lets them experiment and see the power of those tools. And I think I still see folks who are skeptical, the anti AI crowd, that believe that all of that is going to, disappear. I think that a lot of people who are stuck in that anti AI mindset haven't tried the new tools, haven't experimented with them properly in the last few weeks or months. I think the biggest learning here is because it's moving so fast. It's not
Mhm.
enough to try it every half a year. It's a
Yeah.
completely different experience. So yeah, that's the way that I see the community developing right now.
And why do you think this? I want to hear your perspective on the anti AI sort of sentiment, right? I do understand a bit of it because there's a lot of noise, and
Yeah.
there's a fear that okay, it will affect jobs, and there will be a lot of layoffs. What is your perspective on that? Why does that exist, and how can people who are in that camp break out of it?
hmm a few instances that I've seen is because AI sometimes produces slop, like
Mhm.
it produces low quality outputs. And that has happened a lot in the early AI days. And by early AI days, I mean maybe 2 years ago, right? It's you have to have a specific mindset and you have to learn how to use it properly before it starts giving you high quality outputs. So if you send a prompt to Cursor or just ChatGPT, whatever, it might give you, a terrible answer, not the one that you expected. And you tried it once, they close the window, and they go on with their projects in a more manual way. I think that approach, in terms of just prompting and expecting that it gives you something good, is definitely not the way to go. The context is limited, so you have to be really good at writing prompts as well. You have to learn the techniques with like the Claude MD files, with the skills, with the tools, with writing good PRD documents, splitting planning from execution, uh, kind of understanding when the context window needs to clear. So that's a whole new set of techniques that a person needs to learn before they can reliably start getting great outputs. And what I'm seeing is engineers who have a lot of experience, principal engineers who built half the internet, they
Yeah.
are extremely pro AI. They're moving really fast with their projects, and they're coming to a conclusion that code is becoming just as the technicality, right?
Yeah.
So we are at the level where the logic is decoupled from code. And the faster you understand how do you move fast on the logic and work with the AI agents on the reliable code part, the faster you're going to move with your business value and everything else. Of course, there needs to be control and there needs to be verification and integration tests and fallbacks and retries and all of that. But it's learnable and it's just a design problem. It's a solvable problem. So how can people break out from the anti-AI mindset? I think it will take a little bit of time, and it will take a little bit of trial and error for them to learn and understand, like, oh, this output is actually the same or maybe even better than what I would write on the topic. So yeah.
That makes sense. I think in in the future or not, it's already happening, right? So in terms of like, I think about jobs, like how do people because some of this problem that they describe, like the fallback strategies, the basically the system engineering piece. These are old problems, right? So these are not like new problems. These are much more important and critical now because of the non-deterministic nature of these LLM agents. But These are things that engineers probably already know. They just don't connect that to the AI world, and that's why there is some disparity on how they think about their career evolving. And I also think that, in terms of getting jobs and, looking for a different job is also changing, because no one is looking at resume now, because everyone can use AI to create a great resume. What people are looking at is the work that you have done, right? What projects you have done, your GitHub profile, some of the pet projects that you're working on, or what outcome you have driven in your previous company and previous role is becoming a lot more relevant in interviews. Because even I rely on a lot of these stories and evidence in hiring, rather than just looking into the CV and looking, like, going line by line on that, right? So I can really connect to what you were mentioning earlier around, do the projects, like, learn and do your stuff in your ideal future, where I think any cloud, data, AI, these systems come together, they drive business outcomes. What work do you think developers should be freed up to do, and what should AI quietly take off from their plate? I know code is one thing, right? So, like, writing lines of code is going to go. We all know by now that, you don't have to type them anymore. What are
Yeah.
the other things that come to your mind that should be taken off a developer's plate?
Yeah, and before I respond to this one, I just wanted to say I really agree with what you said about developer jobs and how, how hiring managers need to approach
Mhm.
picking the right candidates, because looking at what the person has done is more valuable than what they say they've done. So if you're a candidate right now, if you're trying to get a great job, it's more valuable to build projects and to show what you're capable of doing. And I am seeing a lot of companies also introducing um, like a 5 to 7 days trial period where you work together with their team and they see how you work, because it's one thing to build something on your own and then another thing to experience building as a part of the team. How fast can you think? How thorough is your design? How do you collaborate in getting to the right requirements? That is extremely valuable to me. If you're a candidate, definitely invest in those skills. And then to the second question, um, since AI helps us remove a lot of the routine tasks, what should developers be focusing on? I think this one really depends on your scope, like your exact project. But to me, developers are really becoming the architects, the architects, or even almost like a CTO, because an architect is the one who kind of has the understanding of the overall system, all of the components, how they interact, what the contracts are. So I used to really like, before implementing something, to just write out function names with input parameters and output parameters and the comments of what the function does before implementing it. So I would get a whole, plan with all the function contracts, interactions between them, but without implementation. And I feel like that's what people are doing now. We're building out a workflow scheme of everything that's going on with contracts that are well defined, and then orchestrating everything into a working system. And then that's the architect job. But then the CTO, they operate at a higher level, where what if we're also able to automate the architect's job? What if we have the orchestrator agent that helps us like merge conflicts and do coordination at that higher level? So it is the ability to define what needs to be done, define it not just from the high level, but split it, make sure that it's split into the right granularity tasks with the inputs and outputs and the schemas, um, and also validate once the LLM generates the plan from your brainstorm document, from your input requirements. You have to spot those trade-offs and eliminate any ambiguity. When there is ambiguity, then that's where issues might start, and LLM starts to imagine and hallucinate, or make choices that may not align with what you want the output to be. So your job as a developer is to remove ambiguity by creating a really clear spec and plan,
Mm,
and defining those crucial interaction points between components. So right now, I'm seeing a lot of senior principal engineers spend 80% of their time just writing specs for days before they start, implementing, or before they give it off to an agent and start steering it. So definitely the role is changing here.
absolutely. While you were talking about that, I was also thinking that how I work day to day. Like I have created a bunch of Claude skills, so and this becomes a developer's like bunch of tools or skills they can create in terms of system visioning, strategizing, design, developing. Right, so right from the top to coming towards the coding agents, and I think the ones who will really shine in this era will be the ones who can actually steer this whole stack of skills in AI through agents, right? And that's
Yeah.
already happening, so that's already available. So
Yeah.
that's really good. I mean, I this is really golden information that you have shared. I did not know that there is a model now where companies are hiring for a developer to work for 5 to 7 days and to see how they are performing. But that's the information to me.
Yeah.
Yeah, but
Especially in the startups scene, where you have to move fast and kind of the cost of hiring wrong is so high. So it's paid, of course. You don't
yeah,
work for free, but it allows the candidate to see what it's like to work with the team, but also the company.
nice. Okay, let's move to the fun part of this podcast, right? It's a rapid fire round. I've got 5 questions for you, and yeah, just answer what comes to your mind first, right? So first thing that comes to your mind when you hear the word pragmatic AI.
The architecture that is matched to the stakes of the business value.
Nice. If you had to choose perfect reliability in AI systems or unlimited model capabilities, which one would you choose?
It depends on the task. For business critical, I would pick reliability first and control. For creative, I would pick unlimited model capabilities.
Nice. What is the most common mistake you see teams make when they say add an AI agent to a workflow?
Excluding the domain expert from the logic formation loop. So building systems where the SMEs create value only after the fact. They're like testers, but they're not validators, and I think that's backwards.
Agree, agree. If you had to suggest a developer to pick up one good habit to ship AI features to production, what would it be?
Okay. Stop fixing the AI output and fix your specification and rerun, because then you get a much better outcome. So it's like you're trying to fix the binary versus trying to fix the Java code that you have or Python code. And now fix your spec and it will regenerate the code that is more correct. So you get a better results when you ship your AI features at the end.
Love it, love it. What do you want people to remember you for your work with the developer community and your role in Akamai Technologies?
I think that I would love that people think that I help them realize that AI potential isn't limited by the models. So we already have great models that we can work with. It has been limited by how we architect the context around them and how we design systems that rely on them. And that I show them how to fix that and bridge the gap between what people think is possible with AI and what the business needs reliably done.
Great. Thank you very much. I love your answers. Before we end this podcast, is there anything else that you wanted to mention that we did not talk about?
Yeah, I think this was a great conversation. I really appreciate chatting with you, and I would like to just give it some advice to everyone who is watching. Don't be afraid of AI. This is something that you should be actively experimenting with, and not just by reading, not just by scanning the videos, but try it yourself. This is the only way you can get a real feel for what it's like when AI gives you correct versus incorrect outputs, and where you become the subject matter expert in your specific task. And yeah, if you want to follow me on LinkedIn, be happy to keep in touch and connect with you. Sometimes I share some non-obvious learnings from my experiments and from my work with practical AI. So we'll be happy to keep connected with everyone.
Lena, I love your content. Thank you very much for joining this podcast. I enjoyed our
Thank you.
conversation.
Thank
Thanks.
you.